My name is Frances Badalamenti. I am the author of I Don't Blame You and Salad Days, both novels.
I love that you and Chloe are buds. I have been taking classes with her and a huge fan for like 10 years, it seems like, since her first book.
Yeah, that's what she was saying. She said that you took her class in like maybe she said 2020 and then like again.
Yeah, I took her long one, but I mean, even one-offs and stuff. I've been emailing that bitch for like 10 years.
Totally. I know. I know. I love that. But she has people like that in her life and she's good like that, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, awesome. So I always start with the lightning round. So let's just get into it. When did you first identify as a writer?
I would say when I was in college and I was really involved in writing a lot of bad poetry. As we do. Yeah. As we do.
Did you know it was bad?
No, I didn't know what I was doing. It was just like weird emotions coming out. Like I was like, what the fuck is this? Like we should pull it out. It's seriously, it's weird shit. Anyway, but
What were
yeah,
you studying?
I was a philosophy major.
I can see it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. What's your all-time favorite book?
The Catcher in the Rye.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you
Yeah.
just always been in love with it?
It was the first book I fell in love with. And so it's like the first love, it's like your first love. I was just like, whoa, like I sat and read the whole thing cover to cover. And like I can go back to it time and time again. And it doesn't, I just love it. I
What's the
love it.
thing for you?
What's the thing about it? I don't know. I think it's just simple, but like there's depth to it, right? Like the character, it's like the way it's written is just so clean and simple, but it's like there's so much going on in there.
Yeah. Okay, what's your dream writing routine?
Okay. Like a studio. All right, listen. A studio apartment in the West Village, like the way West Village, though, not Greenwich Village in Manhattan, right? Like the way West Village, like where the actors live and stuff. And like it's just mine. And like I don't have to Airbnb it or any bullshit, like bad IKEA furniture. Like it's just mine. Tons of books. And I can just go there whenever I want. Like maybe I fly there tomorrow.
Oh, you still live in Portland.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just fly back.
Just fly. Like people do, like I'm just gonna go, like I feel, the muse is calling. Like I'm just gonna go to my pied a terre or whatever.
I love that. Okay, I mean, you look like you have a nice pad here. So
Totally.
what's your real writing routine?
Okay, exactly. Like I have a killer studio
It's
garage
it's
space,
cute.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cute. In Portland. I live in Portland, Oregon. So I'm either in here or I'm at a cafe. The whole pandemic thing, like fuck the cafes up, but like we're getting that back. So I'll make a pot of tea, I'll come in here, and I'm like a 2 hour. It
Hmm.
has to be with a hot beverage. Like I can't do it if they're like I've already had too much of that. Like so a hot beverage and then some music, like I'll put a Spotify playlist on and like 2 hours and then I'm done. And then I might do another shift like later in the day.
And you can write with songs that have words.
Totally.
Oh, lucky
Totally.
you.
Yeah. You
Because
can't do that.
I saw your playlist for salad days or whatever. No,
Yeah.
no,
Can't do that.
ambient Tokyo is what I do. No words.
Totally. No, I can't. I like the words. That's why I like going to cafes because I like hearing conversations.
Hmm. What's one piece of writing that makes you jealous you didn't write it?
I thought about that. I think it's The Squid and the Whale, the screenplay by Noah Baumbach. I also read that a lot. Go back to it from time to time. I think it's
Interesting that it's a
brilliant.
screenplay.
I
Do you
know.
write screenplays?
No, no. I mean, I aspire to. I've tried. I don't understand the format. It's very strange to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that piece of writing for sure. As a piece
Just
of
the
writing,
topic?
it's like just as a piece of writing, like almost like reading it like a book. Like if you picked it up, you'd know what I was talking about. It reads really well.
Yeah, I've been doing this thing called Script Shack, and the whole thing just shows you like 2 pages of an amazing screenplay, and the best ones do just read like a novel almost.
That's exactly it. Yeah, and I feel like Squid and the Whale really, like, it's such a strong narrative, you know, and it's just like I just really connect with it. I love the story. I love where it is. I love the time. You know, it's like 80s Park
Uh-huh.
Slope where you can't find parking spots, and like the divorce. You know, like I came from divorced parents, right?
Right.
In that era, the dad, and like in that weird like shitty dad apartment. We all know what it's like to like live in shitty dad apartments, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. All right. Your first book was I Don't Blame You.
Mhm.
Set up the premise and then we'll unpack that.
Okay. So I Don't Blame You is a novel about a young woman who is about to become a mother for the first time. So she's pregnant while her mother is undergoing treatment for cancer. So during that course of a majority of her pregnancy, she lives in Portland, Oregon. Mom is back east in New Jersey, and she's traveling back and forth to help care for her mom. And then her mom passes away when she is about to give birth. So she's about 7 months pregnant.
So it's autofiction. I want to know how long you had been writing this, when you got the aha that it's actually autofiction, and like how that unlocked what it became.
So I wrote that book as a memoir. It was a time when it was like all about the memoirs, and I'm reading all the memoirs, and I was involved just like in that headspace of memoir writing. So I was like, oh, like this thing happened to me that is I'm having a hard time making sense of, which was exactly what happened to the young woman in the story. So I wrote it to make sense of my situation. But then as time went on, it like the way that I approached the writing and the characters started becoming a little more fictionalized, a little bit. Not a lot, but a little. And then by the time that the book was to be published, the publisher and I decided to put it out as a novel, and not like it could have gone either way. It could have been a memoir.
What were your reason? Like, were you writing to protect people? Were you like, why was it a better fit for autofiction?
I was protecting myself. I feel like it was really interesting. Like I remember the conversation with her, the editor and the publisher. And when she said we can just put it out as a novel, like I just felt like, oh God, thank God. Like it was just like, oh, thank God. Like it just felt like a weight was lifted. There was a sense of freedom.
What kinds of things? I mean, you don't have to get to it, it can even be not be an example not from the book, but like what kinds of things are you changing? How close? I'm just very curious as a autofiction curious writer, like how far do you deviate and how do you make those choices for yourself?
So with that particular book, I would say that it was more about the characters. Like, so there was a lot of there were some composite characters. Information and details about the characters were blurred or
Mhm.
fabricated, but that has since shifted with my writing. So this with the second book, like way more. So as I keep going, it's getting more and more closer to what we consider autofiction. So let's say that I Don't Blame You would really be considered an autobiographical novel.
Uh-huh.
Salad Days is getting closer to what we consider autofiction.
So, okay,
Yeah.
maybe this will be helpful for me. Like
Okay.
percentages. Like, would you say I Don't Blame You's like 90%, whatever the truth is? So hard to
Totally.
pin down. But like if we were putting numbers on it, whereas like salad days, there's a lot more maybe, and you're at like 60% or something.
Totally. Yeah. Let's say I Don't Blame You is 85 to 90% truth. Like so okay, so let's be clear about something. So that novel, I Don't Blame You, probably like blends into creative nonfiction, right?
Uh-huh.
Get what I'm saying? Like autobiographical novel and or creative nonfiction.
Like you could have gotten away with some of those choices anyway, because of how those genres work.
Correct. Yeah, they're so close, right? They're so like it's
Mhm.
like there's just the littlest things. 100% correct. So 90, let's say 85 to 90% for I Don't Blame You. Salad Days veers more into, like you were saying, like 50 to 60%. That's when it's like it's based on my experiences. Where I Don't Blame You is pretty much my experiences, the narratives that I have lived through, and my experiences with like slight fabrications.
So, since we're talking about it, set up the premise for Salad Days.
So Salad Days has the same protagonist as I Don't Blame You, young woman, but this goes back in time to when she was, I'd say it's like a 20-something coming of age novel. A woman who is, living with roommates in a shared housing situation in New Jersey, near Manhattan, but not quite Manhattan, working at an independent music venue, and just sort of trying to make sense of life, hoping to find a partner. It splits its time also with her years in the future when she is married. She finally meets a partner, she's married, but then that relationship dissolves because she meets another person. So it's split between New Jersey and Portland. And there's a difference in the narratives, and there's a difference in time.
So, when you set out to write Salad Days, you had already had this other book experience and you kind of had probably more of an understanding about how to do this. So, how were you conceiving of it going in? And were you like, it's like me, but if this happened to me, kind of a deal? And then you're giving yourself permissions in that way that you didn't have at the beginning of I don't
Blame
blame
you.
you.
Yeah. 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 So by the time that I was writing Salad Days, interestingly enough, so I wrote Salad Days during a time when I Don't Blame You was sitting in a drawer unpublished. So that book was just, who knows what was going to happen with that book. Like book was not being published, the first book. So I was like, all right, like maybe it's just maybe I'll have an opportunity to publish the second book. Like, let me just write the second book. At that point, I just would be reading more autofiction-y kind of stuff. And that was like my jam at the time. And so I started doing that thing where it's like, oh, I experienced this thing. I personally moved to Portland from the East Coast with a husband. And then 9 months later, I no longer had that husband. Like, okay, like that's my starting off point. But then I started going into like a zone of, well, what if that happened? Or what if that happened? My style became more fictional.
And what does it give you that I know I sound like such a nerd, but what does it give you that like memoir doesn't? Because you obviously love it. You keep doing it. So like what is that fictional process giving you?
It's just there's more freedom. It's like if I'm writing about an environment, let's say like in Salad Days, I write about when the protagonist splits off from her husband and she moves into like a shared housing situation, right? I thought about all these in Portland here, right? It's all about these big houses with like 4 bedrooms and like 5 or 6 people living in there. And I had been to potlucks at these houses. I never lived in one myself, but I'd been to so many of them, and they're very unique and cool and gross. They smell. Like gross, it's dirty, whatever. They're not going to be clean. I just had friends that lived like that. There's jars of like a pantry with like jars of weird shit. So I just use that. Like,
Uh-huh.
right. I was able, like, oh, that's fun. Like I can use other people's experiences that I
Yeah.
kind of experienced. It's fun.
Yeah. Okay, so I think there was a story you visited our class, Chloe's class, and your manuscript had been sitting in a drawer for like a year before it got published. So let's talk publishing and how it saw the light of day.
Yeah, no, I know. It's crazy. All right, so listen, this is what happened. So yes, I went through all the things. It's funny too, Courtney, because I'm writing about it now in my third book. Like I'm writing about this experience, as a matter of fact. So I write the book, and when writers write the first book, they're like, oh, then you go get it published, right? Yeah, totally, no big deal. You just go get it published. That's not what happens. Let's just be clear about that. That generally is not what happens. You have to figure out the whole thing. So I did all the pitching to the agents in the presses, and it's like the book got read by agents and publishers. Like it got close multiple times. It just never found a home. It had it's like very close, but not no, thanks, but no thanks, right? Had meetings. I was writing about like this lunch meeting I had with an editor, I had coffee dates with agents, the whole thing. And nothing happened. So I was like, all right, it's going in the drawer or the freezer, or however you're gonna say it. And then I just set about writing, okay, I'll write the second book. Let's see what happens. So I'm at the coast here in Oregon one day and I go on a hike. I swear this happened. I go on a hike and I'm by myself. Maybe one of my dogs was with me, and I'm like hiking in the middle of the woods. And I said aloud, I said, okay, I'm ready. I'm like, I'm ready. Like, I swear.
Shut up.
I swear to God, listen to me. I'm ready. Like, I'm ready now for that book to be published. So I go home to we have a little cabin in the woods by the coast. I go home and I check my emails, and the publisher that accepted my manuscript finally sent me an email saying that they wanted to publish my book.
Oh
Isn't it?
my
I
God.
know. So everybody go do that. Go into the woods.
So then, did you have an agent? Did you need an agent?
I did not have an agent, and I did not need an agent. Not for that. So the press that published my two books is small. It's a local Portland based independent press. Small, tiny, didn't need anything.
So then what was the editing process like?
What was the editing process on the first book? I was assigned an editor. It was the person that runs the press, and it was just, yeah, like I think it was just multiple rounds of here's the thing, she didn't do, and this is another small press thing. It wasn't very much developmental editing. I want to backtrack for a second and also say I had hired an editor at one point. Now I'm remembering. I had hired an outside editor to help me sort of developmentally shape it. I didn't know how to write a book. People don't know how to write books.
Yeah, well, it's like that's why I'm in Chloe's class, because for your first thing, it's like if no one is bought your thing and is holding your hand, yeah, you kind of have to create that for yourself. So you had already done a lot of that work before they even wanted to buy it. So you're just mostly doing line edits
Correct.
with that editor.
Yeah,
And
exactly. That's correct. That's correct.
and then when it came out, how did it go? Anything great come out of it as far as like press or whatever? And what did you learn about how to do book promo?
Okay. I mean, it just was out there. And I am a terrible like self-promotion person. Like I don't like it. I'm not good at it. It makes me feel terrible. I hate it all. So I don't know what to say about that. I will say that it just laid a foundation for me, and it took away a lot of the anxiety of like, I got to get this thing published. Like, and like what I'm writing about now in this third book is a lot about the anxiety that writers face, like this feeling of like, if I don't publish this book, if I don't write this book, number one, number two, if I don't publish it, I'm gonna die. It got very existential. It got real. I was at a different place just developmentally as a writer and as a person then. So I've learned a lot through that process, but it was a learning experience for sure. And it caused it actually made me really like that book being out made me very anxious.
Really?
Yep. Yep. Very.
Okay. And I'm very curious so now you're writing about this writing process,
Huh?
but you counsel writers too, don't
Yep.
you?
Yep.
And so is that all related? What have you learned about how weird we are and what we need to thrive?
Exactly. And isn't it fun? Isn't it classic that I'm writing a book about just that? So that's autofiction. Like, this is it. We cracked it. Like, this is what autofiction is. We're making story out of exactly that, of being a writer and anxiety. So here's what it's all about, right? We as artists crave validation. We want to be seen. And what I learned the hard way, like, and when I say the hard way, like, I mean, I went through some serious shit, like mental health wise, after that first book went out. You could ask Chloe about it, or we could just talk about it. Like, it was gnarly. And that allows me to work with people because I know what goes on. And if you're looking for outside validation through your work, it's not going to be good. It's not good. Does that
So
make sense?
that was the disappointing part of the process to you, was like once it was outside of you, then you were like, oh, it's not doing what I thought it was. Was
It
that
was
the anxiety?
it was more that it made me really uncomfortable that it was there. Like,
That people could read it?
yeah, yeah, it must have been. It's kind of like, it's almost hard to have words for, but being seen in that way was really uncomfortable for me. Again, somebody that's not really into self-promotion, like,
Mhm.
I'm not comfortable. I'm not like really into social media. I'm not like, I can do a reading and have fun with it, but it's just not really my thing, you know? So it just was really uncomfortable to be exposed in that way.
Okay, we're gonna jump around a
Yeah.
little bit, but
Yeah.
let's do Salad Days Publishing,
Okay.
because you wrote that well. Your other book was coming into being. So where did they cross paths and how did you find a home for that one? Was the place just like, yeah, we'll take whatever's next?
Yeah. So, okay. So Salad Days was written when I Don't Blame You got accepted for publication, right? So I am at the time, I was working at a liberal arts college here in Portland, which is also in my new book. And I had to edit I Don't Blame You. I had written Salad Days. I ended up quitting that job. They said, yeah, that's great. Let's take what's next. For sure. For sure. It was pretty easy. I mean, they read it and they were like, yeah, sure, let's do it. Cool.
Similar editing process where it was like pretty much baked, but they were like, let's just clean it up a little.
That is correct. More like line edits. And for that book, I didn't hire a developmental editor. Like, I just went at it by myself because I felt confident enough at that point. And again, that's the beauty of like continuing to write books, is you just get better and better at it.
Yeah. So I was hearing you on another podcast and you were like, once I figured it out, and it is like, what is that? What is that cracking? I kind of know what you mean because I feel like I'm getting closer myself, but like, I'm just curious to hear you articulate what is it to figure out how to write a book?
I think it's a couple things. I think number one is understanding story structure. Unless we are trained in some way, we always say like, oh, either you have the MFA or you don't. Like, I don't even know if in MFA programs, if they really teach you story structure. But as writers, we need a fundamental. We need some kind of structure. We need to understand story structure. We need to know how narrative works. So I understood story structure by that point. And I also learned how to be my own editor.
Mm.
And that's like rule number two, like, learn how to be your own editor. And so once the second book, I was like, oh, I get it now. Like, I can do this. I can go it alone. I don't need that much help. Like, I get it.
Did you have any ass in the chair problems? Like where, I don't know, you'd get in your own head and not be able to sit down, or was any of that kind of part of it?
No, no, not at all. I don't know. Like, I always tell people that growing up with a father that was a musician, my dad's since gone, but he was a jazz musician. He was a trumpet player. And every day he went to his studio in the back of the house and he shut the
Oh,
door. Yeah. So I know what it's like to have routine. you have to practice. A musician, you know, what would he say? Like, you have to keep your chops up or something. So I had that discipline in my DNA. So that is not an issue for me. Discipline is not an issue. The third book's been funky because I have been teaching more and I do work with more writers, whereas during I Don't Blame You and a majority of like those two books, I Don't Blame You and Salad Days, I was a mom picking up a kid from school at 3 o'clock, and then I didn't have to work that much. I was grateful. I had the luxury of a spouse that was able to cover our lifestyles at the time.
It's just like the exhaustion from the other job and like not having as much time. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even call it exhaustion. I would call it more when I'm in other people's manuscripts, it's hard for me to be in my own manuscript, if that makes sense. Like the work that I'm doing now with teaching and mentoring, I'm doing a lot of editing. I read a lot.
It requires brain space. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't really have a lot left from my own work. So what I do is I work in 3-month intervals and then I take a month off.
Oh, nice. I
Yeah.
like that. So where are you at on it right now?
I'm in what I call a residency. I
How
call them
much
residency months.
do you have a sense of like where in the process you're at?
With my residency or with my new manuscript?
With the new manuscript. Are you
It's
like, it's done-ish or not?
it's
Half?
done-ish. Yeah, it's done-ish, and I'm going back in and I am editing it. And so yeah, it's done-ish. It's done-ish.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see.
nice.
Yeah, totally. It's fun. It gets book writing. I don't know if anybody like other people will agree with me, but book writing gets a lot more fun as more and more they, you know,
The
it
muscles
gets
developed.
yeah, it gets easier and it gets fun.
What are your plans for, are you gonna go back to the same publisher?
I don't think so. I think I'm done with that publisher. I think they were amazing and they offered me wonderful opportunities and just really supportive because I was able to do whatever I wanted, and I was able to make them look the way I wanted. Like, it's gonna sound funny, but cover art like is really important to me. And my spouse, who's a graphic designer, was able to design the covers. So I had
Cool.
that, I had that creative freedom. They gave me a lot of freedom, but it's time for a shift. And I don't know exactly what that's going to look like just yet. So we'll see.
That's fun though. New
It is.
possibilities.
It's super fun. And I don't care, you know, I'm chill. I like that anxiety of like, is it going to happen? Like it's gone. Like, I don't feel that same anxiety.
So since you're so far along in the process, do you have an inkling of what could be after that? Or are you just gonna find it when you get there?
I think I'm just like, what other book?
Mhm.
Yeah, no idea. Like, I don't know if it would even be a book. I don't know. I kind of played around with a film project over the
Mm.
past couple months, so I don't, I don't know. Yeah, I can't even say. I really don't know.
So I fangirled out a little bit because of, I mean, New Yorker bylines are like, and you were a little less impressed by your own self when I said that. But tell us a little bit about that process, how you landed that article, and any takeaways from the experience.
Totally. No, listen, I know we talked about that in Chloe's class. It's a big deal. Again, for me, like who I am as a person, like it's hard for me to sort of, I don't know if it's a little bit of an imposter syndrome thing, but I'm just
Uh,
like, whatever. Like whatevs. It's like the New Yorker. No, I hear you. I hear you. It was an amazing opportunity, and I'm very proud of it. What happened was as follows. So my uncle, my dad's younger brother, is the late composer of like a lot of David Lynch films. Okay. He was a very, very accomplished composer for film. Not only David Lynch, but many wonderful, wonderful directors. He was very prolific and an amazing person, and somebody that really meant a lot to me as an artist and as a family member, as a person. He was a big part of our family, and we lost him in December of 2022. So I had interviewed him for the Believer magazine a couple years ago, which was a really cool opportunity and just fun, crazy.
Oh,
And
it's so
so
good you did that too for the, yeah.
totally, totally. I'm glad I did it too. It took a lot of courage. That was really, really hard to do, but I am glad I did it.
And sometimes you feel like, oh, I'm going to have all the time in the world. And it's like, you don't know.
Totally. Exactly. Because I regret it not doing that with my dad, who was
Yeah.
also an amazing musician, or it's like getting the life story, right? Of these cool people. So anyway, my uncle Angelo passed away, and I was helping my brother with the eulogy. And I just started, like, I was in my studio here, and I was just kind of like riffing and thinking about him as a person, and thinking about the experience that I had with him when we were working on that interview. It was really wacky, and he was a very quirky person, and I started writing a bunch, and it ended up like, oh, I'm kind of working on a personal essay. Like, it just sort of started feeling that way, and I just couldn't stop. I was sort of in a fugue state in the grief, and as we do, right? We're writers, so if we're in grief, we're going to write. A musician's going to write a song, a painter's going to paint. And at one point, I sent it to a writer friend who writes a lot of journalism, and she was like, "This seems like something that would be really good for the New Yorker." And I was like, "Yeah, we're right, totally." Anyway, so she gave me the email address of an editor that she had been in touch with. And so I was like, "Okay, I don't know." I emailed that editor. And when I say 2 minutes later that she wrote me back, like, I basically was like, "Hey, I'm the niece of the late composer Angelo Badalamenti. I'm working on something that feels like a personal essay. I don't know if this is something you'd be interested." It was really casual. Like, when I pitch, it's me. It's not like a form letter. I'm very much myself. I just like huck it out there. And she literally wrote back 2 minutes later, and I was on my couch, and my spouse was talking to me, and I'm like, "I don't know what you're saying." Like, it was like, I couldn't hear what he was saying. There's just this moment where everything sort of stopped. And she was basically like, "I'd love to read it." So I said, "Listen, it's pretty raw and rough. Like, do you want it now?" And she was like, "Yeah, send it to me." So I sent it to her, and she loved it, and she helped me with it. She helped me make it into a New Yorker piece, basically, it was amazing. Like, the editing was amazing. Not only the editing, but the fact checking was wild.
That's what's so exciting about it. Yeah. Like, what was some of the editing? What was it about it?
I think the skill of, and the pace of it. She just was able to see things that I didn't realize could be seen. You know,
So she was
it's hard.
cutting
Yeah,
or having you expand?
both, both.
Both. Oh,
Yeah,
just very artfully getting in there. And yeah. Okay. Those editors are amazing.
it was. Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, it was amazing. It was like, it's like my spouse and I call it's high. It was high end. It's very high end. It's very high end.
Well, kudos. That is
Yeah.
very high end.
Yeah, it was very high end. It was very high end. Yeah, I'm really proud of it. And it's for my family. It's like, yes, it's the New Yorker, and it's an amazing for all writers, right? Like, all writers want to be published in the New Yorker. It's a rite of passage, and I'm very proud of it. But more than anything, it was for my family. You know what I mean? Does that
I
make sense?
totally, yes.
Yeah.
When my grandma died, I was also stuck at home and just in my own whatever, but I was like, we're going to make a book and everyone's going to give me their memories. And I made like a book that we got printed down at for everyone.
Yes.
But it was like, yeah, this is what I do that can actually help you. Art seems kind of stupid until something like that happens sometimes. And then you're like, oh yeah, we need these stories to like live and pass on and
Yeah.
whatever. It seems a little more
Exactly.
important.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So it's just, I would have done it anyway, and it just happened to be that listen, my uncle was a very respected person, and that helped, right? That helped me get, an interview in the Believer magazine, which helped me get published in the New Yorker. Had my uncle been like Joe Baloney up the street, you know what I mean? Like, that's somebody people wanted to read about, and read about, like, somebody that was close to that person, an intimate family member of that person.
Yeah.
Right?
Very cool piece. Yes.
Yeah,
So that's on my bucket list. Do you have any bucket list writing goals?
Like I was saying before, I feel like film is my first artistic love. When I was a young person, it was really important to me to, like, independent film was a big thing when I was coming of age. So I feel like I'd love to write a screenplay or be involved in filmmaking in some way, whether it's documentary or something.
Cool.
Yeah.
And what's one piece of writing advice you wish you could give your former self?
I think it's give less fucks, for sure. And this is what I say to my students. It's like, give less fucks. Like, don't care that much about it.
That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
One tip for writers trying to get a book published:
give less fucks about it.
Still give less fucks.
Yeah.
And your all-time favorite piece of your own writing?
I think it's that New Yorker piece. I mean, I don't think so. I know it. It's definitely that one is the most, I put the most heart into it.
Uh-huh.
And
Yes.
it's the thing that really sucked the marrow out of my bones, it's like that I don't know if you know that feeling, or if people understand that feeling, when you're just like, there's nothing left. Like, I am just like wrung out to dry. Everything took everything out of me to do it.
Okay, well, you said you don't really like to connect online, but can you shout out your handles, or if there's any place you want to direct people?
Honestly, I am old school emailer. Like, my web, I know this is so corny, I'm so embarrassing. Like, my website, which is my name, Frances Badalamenti, like, you could read my stuff is all there, and you could email me if you have questions. I'm happy to be supportive to people. But yeah, I try to stay away from the thing, all the other distracting things.
Hey, more people should probably take that line.
Uh-huh.
Okay, awesome. This has been great. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much, Courtney. I really appreciate it.